Hi, I'm Sarah Grace McCandless, and this is OnBrand. These conversations are really focused on looking at that connection between people and the companies that they engage with. And I like to look at it from all aspects of the journey in the relationship, from getting to know who a brand is, to becoming their customer, to becoming their advocate and their fan. And today's guest is representing a brand that I have been a true brand advocate of for quite some time. I'll talk a little bit about how we met under those circumstances where I met as his brand fan. And he's also working in an industry that is really doing some innovative moves when it comes to customer experience, particularly in social media. Today's guest is Michael Roy, head of social care for Alaska Airlines. Michael, welcome to OnBrand.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm just thrilled to be here with you.
Well, I'm so thrilled to have you. I mean, when we first met several years ago at an industry conference, I did approach you as a true brand advocate and a fan. I've been flying Alaska Airlines for years, but before I get too gushy about my brand advocacy, can you tell us a little bit about your role with Alaska and a little bit about the brand as well?
Yeah, going back, I, I'm I'm a small town kid. I grew up in Santa Fe, joined the military, went to college, had a family along the way, became quite the entrepreneur. It was an amazing time full of ups and downs. I think that's where customer service kind of just was implanted into my DNA. Fast forward a few years, I packed up 4 kids, moved to Seattle, and started my career at Alaska Airlines. It was always on the customer service side of the house. With my background, I was really able to bring that kind of customer service experience over to Alaska. Along the way, our marketing team reached out and they said, we've got some guests reaching out to us on social media. We know what to do with creating content, but we don't know how to answer these guests. And that's kind of where social care was born. I think that was probably 7-8 years ago. Along the way, we created a 24/7 social care team. We've got processes in place. We've got, we deal with all sorts of, exciting things that happen in the airline business and not so much fun things that can also happen. And so we continue to push forward and just have a lot of fun engaging guests along the way.
You make a great point about how this all started with the social care side of things or the customer service side of things. I've talked before about social. When it was sort of born, it was given to marketing. That's where my background was. And it's the exact reason I was brought into the role that I'm in today is really it's a cohesive experience. Everything happens in social right now. So you were on the customer service side, and then there was this need in what was considered a marketing channel. It needs to represent the brand no matter what stage of the journey. Can you tell us a little bit about who Alaska is as a brand?
Yeah, Alaska's, wants to be your hometown airline. We've got a West Coast vibe, but beyond that, we're bold. We think of ourselves as smart and innovative, and yet very relatable. We want to make sure that we can be there for guests so that we can prioritize safety. I mean, the one thing that we're all about is safety. I mean, our CEO will start every conversation with safety and putting the safety of our guests and our fellow employees first. Additionally, like I said, the West Coast vibe, the 115 destinations we fly to, at the end of the day, it's all about the guests, the destinations we take them to, the fun we have along the way. That's who Alaska Airlines is.
Yeah, and you mentioned that safety has always been a priority before, anything in the last year has happened, which I'll get back to. But that's something that I remember too, even down to the cards that you read about the different procedures, when you're on board. And I know, like, the drawings that they have, they're holding a cup of coffee and they have a Sub Pop t-shirt and just, it's one of the things that really endeared me to the brand. And not just because I live in the Pacific Northwest. You also mentioned 115 destinations. Is that the current routes that you have?
Yeah, that's the dots in the map, cities we fly to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that surprises a lot of people when I throw out that, 115 destinations that we fly to. People don't, I think we catch them off guard when we let them know how many places we fly to. So um, we have a very strong route map, again, based along the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a lot of partners worldwide in which we can take inbound guests and take them to their destinations throughout the continental U.S., Canada, Mexico. We even fly to Costa Rica.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And I know that, originally when I started flying Alaska, it was a little bit more West Coast based or West Coast focused, but definitely started taking more of those cross country trips. So, Alaska, I think that is something that a lot of people maybe don't realize or don't know. You also mentioned safety first. That's always been at the core of the brand. And boy, I bet that came in handy over the last year. So, Alaska's really done some very, very innovative moves to really pivot and respond. Can you speak a little bit to that, knowing that, of course, the airlines industry is something that's been greatly affected by what's been occurring, globally?
Yeah, I mean, last year was a very tough year for us. Almost overnight, half to three quarters of our guests disappeared. They were concerned about COVID, rightfully so. But we found that we were pretty quick to adjust to this kind of ever-changing landscape that we faced. When the pandemic struck, we immediately realized we had to do something different. We had to be bold, going back to our mission statement. So we created what we call our Next Level Care program. Next Level Care is a commitment and a promise to our guests to ensure their safety and the safety of our employees is put number one. This commitment provides a higher standard of cleanliness and safety precautions throughout the entire guest experience. Additionally, we caught a very lucky break. We fly some of the most advanced aircraft in the world, and their powerful HEPA filtration systems really save the day. They cleanse the air every 3 to 5 minutes on board. This really helped us to deliver on our commitment to safety. That and our mask policies and the other 100 items. I think we're over 100 items that we've added to our Next Level Care program. But it's all these things in combination that have helped us to make flying safer. And some might even argue that's safer than pre-pandemic times.
Yeah, it makes me think of a conversation I had actually when we launched the show with Laura Smith from Hertz. And we were talking about how, again, kind of in that hospitality transportation, and we were talking about how they had to really visualize the changes that they made from a safety protocol standpoint. And I think Alaska has had a similar situation. And again, but really taken a creative approach to that. Can you talk a little bit about some of the campaigns that have rolled out? Specifically, I'd love to hear you tell a little bit about Safety Dance.
Yeah, I mean, safety dance was the culmination of a lot of things, and they came later in the year. But earlier in the year, we realized one of the things, I think a lot of us learned when, I don't want to say through shock and awe, but when we can strongly deliver a message. And one of the messages we need to really deliver early on was, no mask, no fly. And so we started a no mask, no fly campaign in which we would hand because we don't want to make the situation uncomfortable for everyone on board, but we felt like it was really important to let those guests know that weren't compliant with our no mask, no fly policy, to know that hey, we have a problem here. So we started a yellow card solution, similar to in a soccer match where you'd hand a yellow card. In this case, we would warn the guests, hey, we really need to keep a mask on. It's not only for the safety of yourself, it's for the safety of all on board. If they didn't comply, we gave them a yellow card. When we gave them the yellow card, it means that we were going to, behind the scenes, look at the guest. And, in many cases, we've banned these guests from flying Alaska Airlines. And while no company wants to ban a guest, we felt like it was very important for us to make a very strong statement to say, hey, if you can't comply with policies that we have, then you're not welcome to do business with us. And unfortunately, we've had to ban well over 100 guests from flying Alaska Airlines.
Yeah, I'm sure that's maybe not something that has, a first of its kind, right? But, having a strong point of view and alignment with your brand values and your brand mission. You mentioned some things that were already in place and then some new initiatives, the safety dance being the culmination of the different efforts, the yellow card. Are there things that you think will carry forward once we're past the need for these kind of tighter restrictions?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of things that will carry forward. Obviously, hygiene is going to be the big one. I think it is a big wake-up call for everyone. Deep cleaning on our aircraft. We always went through after what we would call it a turn, when the aircraft comes into the gate and then it leaves the gate. But we felt like we needed to do a deeper cleaning, and now every aircraft overnight goes through a deep cleaning in which the ceilings are wiped down, the bins are wiped down. We go through with special equipment to make sure that the entire aircraft is sanitized. So that's very important for us. I think things like that will always be with us, not only in the airline industry, but throughout society.
I agree. I mean, I was a very frequent flyer before things kind of came to a halt, and I've flown a few times in the last year, but I always thought of myself as a pretty cautious flyer. I kind of had my kit, I had it down to a science, with my hand sanitizer and the wet ones and, just all the things that you bring on, your contact solution or whatever, all the things I needed. And I think that will carry forward, hopefully from a guest perspective too. Okay, so let's pivot. I want to talk a little bit about social specifically. So again, when you and I met several years ago at the Insight conference, one of the things first of all, I was so excited to talk to you because literally could not be a bigger brand nerd and I say brand nerd with all the love in the world for Alaska Airlines. But one of the other things that really drew me to you is that you were already in the social space. And it is why I was brought into my role that I have now. I worked on the social marketing side, but really, again, to create the cohesive social engagement services that we do for our clients, including brand advocacy, brand awareness, and customer service. You were there too, and not a lot of people were at the time. And I just remember meeting you and like, oh my gosh, he totally gets it, and not everybody was having that conversation when you and I met several years ago. Why is social experience so important?
Sure. I mean, I think looking back upon that time, and I remember it very fondly, we realized that, we were in the transportation industry and many of our guests were mobile. Looking back on this, we realized that during this experience, during this time of transition, when guests were looking at social media and they would see brands on there, and now they found a way that they can communicate with brands. So for us, it was very important that we got it. And so I think about it, businesses generally spend a lot of time and money reaching out to guests, whether it's radio ads, TV ads, signage. We found out that on social, we had guests reaching out to us. In many cases, that it was unsolicited. We saw this as a wonderful opportunity to engage with our guests on social media. It created what I would call a magical touch point. whether it was in the form of a service complaint or maybe even a selfie that people take when they head out on vacation, because we all love selfies when we're heading out on vacation, and we're always taking that selfie and sharing it with friends and family. It allowed us to reach out and touch these guests as a brand to really engage in this magical moment. And when we do that on social, it it kind of makes our guests feel good. They feel good because they've heard from a brand. It lets them know that we're here to help them. Um, and it generates, well, like, repeat customers. They know that they can come back on social, and we've had social fans throughout the years who we've made the initial connection on social. And I kind of think back, where did this start? It kind of goes back to my restaurant years when I was owning a restaurant. It was really important for me to personally reach out to guests when they came into my restaurant. It was important for several reasons. One is it's a great guest experience, but second of all, we really needed the business. It was very important that I made sure that guests understood why we were there and to greet our guests. We do this, we kind of take that same philosophy and we bring it to Alaska Airlines Social. We greet our guests, we engage with our guests. We don't just wait for negative things to happen. We engage in the positive. We engage in the fun. We are there as a friend. It's really created a lot of magic along the way.
Yeah. And I think, you talked about it being a relationship, and also, you're showing up, of course, when things are going wrong, but why not show up when things are going right or things are going well, right? Because it's a whole relationship. And again, I feel like I'm like, your street team on this, because I have had those interactions with Alaska, and I have tweeted the photos, when I'm in flight or my lay down of like what I'm reading and what I have with me or whatnot. And I've also reached out like when, maybe my TSA pre-check number didn't get put on, or I have a question. I had a situation with Alaska. I was flying from San Diego to San Francisco, not a long flight, but it got super delayed. But what was great was, it was the communication I got from the social team was not only very fast and responsive. Again, it was something that was going wrong, but the pilot was fantastic about keeping us up to date during the flight too, and why things were getting delayed. It was a really consistent brand experience. And even though something was going wrong, I put that all together in the bigger picture of my overall relationship, right, with Alaska. So, again, I don't think a lot of brands out there are necessarily showing up for the cohesive picture, or maybe it's a little disjointed for how they're set up. Are you working pretty closely in collaboration with marketing? And how does that social role, how would you describe it on your team?
Well, we work hand in hand with marketing. It's very important that the two complement each other. We can help support their marketing campaigns, but I feel like that organic, we can push a lot of messages out to our guests, but the way we communicate with our other guests, the way guests can see that Alaska Airlines is there on social media to assist, help, have fun, that creates a marketing opportunity in of itself, and it happens organically. And I think it's that genuine loving care that people see that they really enjoy. And that's what I love about our mission at Alaska Airlines on social. It's about real people having real conversations. We're here to inform, educate, and have fun on social. And we create fans along the way. We've even, I think back over the years, we've even had some of our social agents asked out to prom. Yeah, it's amazing. It's simply amazing, the power of social, how it can take our big giant world that we live in and make it a bit smaller. And even going beyond that, we can make it one-on-one. And how many times do guests have a one-on-one experience with a large brand? It's very rare. And so we take this as our opportunity to allow those one-on-one connections to be formed. And we believe that this is what will create loyalty over the long run.
Do you think that you mentioned before too, kind of these other traditional ways of marketing? And again, this is something that, I have conversations about a lot with our clients about the value of these one-on-one engagements. And even like if we want to get really analytical, the earned media value, there are ways to measure that. It's kind of flipped the influencer model too, talking to real people, real guests versus maybe the traditional influencer model, which is, you clearly paid somebody to make a statement about your company that may or may not resonate with the guests that you're trying to connect with. How do you think this approach, this one-on-one approach, helps to build community?
Well, I think the one-on-one approach helps to build community because, we go back to the real people, real conversations. They're not experiencing a bot. We've avoided bots on social media. A lot of brands are going in that direction. One of the things we've done is we've stayed away from that because we believe we lose that touch point. We lose that golden opportunity to engage with our guests. So I think it's critical that we continue to create a social atmosphere for what social is meant to be. And that's for people to be able to reach out and get the answers that they need or the assistance they need from a real live person. And what's incredible about this story is we have amazing response times. I believe that we have not only the best response times in our industry, in the airline industry, but we have probably some of the best response times, across all brands. Our goal is to engage with the guests under 5 minutes. That's it may sound like a long time, but in social media, that is just breakneck speed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially in your particular industry, if you let something sit there for a while, the moment has passed, especially if it has something to do with the flight that you're taking that day. The other thing I think is so cool, though, is, if you're on an Alaska flight, one of the things that you can do is you can stay connected through messaging in flight, right? For free, you can kind of have those conversations. You can stay, quote unquote, on the phone all the time if you need to. And you mentioned a 5-minute or less response time. That's sort of the equivalent of picking up the phone in social, right? If we want to think about kind of more traditional customer service.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the early years of social. You weren't really sure which direction to head. We saw different brands doing different things, but from day one, our number one rule was to never ignore a guest. That was just that for us. That was a no-brainer. If you're a business and you're picking up the phone, then you owe it to your guests to pick up those social conversations that are happening on social media. I don't believe that there's much difference between the two. If someone takes time out of their day to reach out to your brand, whether it's on the phone or on social, we owe it to that guest to reach out to that guest. If the phone was ringing, would you ignore the phone ringing? Brands will tell you that they won't ignore the phone ringing. Unfortunately, many brands ignore those guests on social media. We don't. We can't afford to. And it's simple. It's the right thing to do to be able to be there for your guests.
Yeah, I agree. That's such a great point. And I think that there's a lot that other brands who are not in the same industry can learn from this too, and kind of create their own versions that stay true to their brand. Again, it's definitely a big part of the conversations that I have on a regular basis. How do you design that and consider who your guest is, or your customer, or your member? And what is the kind of holistic view there? With your guest, besides prom invitations, are there things that you've learned from these engagements and experiences that maybe have informed the business somehow? These, your social team is playing sort of this customer care and comms role. So are there things that you've learned that have either changed the way that you do social or maybe been fed back into other areas of the business?
Absolutely. Sometimes, with large companies, it can there can be a delay in getting customer feedback back to the executive team or our leaders who need to make decisions. With social analytics, we can pick up on chatter immediately. We can find those insights. We can feed them back into the business so that we can make smart and rapid changes. I, you know, to the way we do business. Last year was a great example. There were many times when we saw the chatter on there. We saw where we were going with a policy, and we shared why maybe that wasn't the wisest move. And we can we can we can share the data, and we can speak to the data, but you really have to show the data to really make change, and our customers do that for us. And so, with the advanced social listening tools that are out there to us, we have the ability to really pivot on a dime to be able to assist our guests and assist our teams making these decisions.
Yeah, there is something really powerful about that real time kind of pulse check, right? That you can kind of keep. And I love what you said too about, that you got to add sort of the so what and the now what to it though as well. Otherwise, it's just maybe numbers and charts. And so with the analytics that you're doing, the trends that you're looking at, you're kind of looking at the drivers behind it before, and then maybe feeding that back to the business and with a recommendation. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's very fair to say. We'll take a look at sentiment. Sentiment's come a long way with the introduction of AI. We can see, because it's hard to go through 10,000 conversations, and you can pick out topics, but it's really hard to go through 10,000 conversations and really dive into what's causing the issue. But with AI and the tools that we have, we can sort these conversations. We can see the type of issues we're having. We can also see what type of issues our competitors are having. Maybe speed bumps that we can avoid. If we see brand X having an issue, maybe we can pivot and we can look for a different way to, so that when that issue hops up on our radar, we're prepared for it, and we've taken a different course of action.
Yeah. And, social is a living, breathing space, right? It's ever changing. I think about how much stuff has changed since you and I met. Even you talked about tool and tech stack. Thankfully, things are just getting better and better, right? In terms of what's out there to help us, because we could have the most amazing teams in the world, but I like to say, get me to the moon by Tuesday with a skateboard. It's like, oh, all right, we'll see what we can do. So luckily, our skateboards are becoming rocket ships at this point. But when you think about Alaska, you've really done a lot. You got to be kind of nimble, right? In this living and breathing industry. What do you think are the most important considerations for creating a best-in-class customer experience?
Yeah, great question. I think the most important thing is getting the right people in place. Getting the people that know the most about your business. It's critical that our social care agents, they know A to Z about Alaska Airlines. They need to know our entire business model. They need to be fearless. That's one of the things we really stress to our agents, is to be fearless when engaging customers. It's not always easy people spend a lot of money traveling. And so sometimes we'll let them down. When we let them down, it's important that we engage with our guests, we put our best foot forward, and we try to come to a resolution because at the end of the day, everyone wants a win-win. I feel like if we can create those win-win scenarios, we're doing really well. And then it goes back to, engaging with your audience, engaging on the positive, engaging on the negative, taking a look. Our social care teams are canaries in the coal mine. So they're the first to hear anything about changes in your business, from the guest point of view, and sharing those changes or sharing that insight with your leadership teams that can help drive change.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's the magic combination. First, really understand, know the brand inside and out and your respective services, your products, who you are, your values, and then know who your guest is, know who your customer is and how they see you. And to your point, maybe they can kind of tip you off, right? Where there might be cracks in the foundation or things that are really bubbling up that you can build more of too. You know, looking ahead from an industry perspective, what are you most excited about in the coming year? What are you looking forward to? Again, social being a living and breathing space. What really excites you as we look forward?
Well, what really excites me is getting behind the COVID concerns that we all have, getting back to somewhat of a normal way of life, getting back to having customers excited to fly to different places and to be able to help these guests return back to airline travel. I'm also looking forward to expanding our social listening. We have a lot of channels popping up. TikTok is a great example. TikTok, it's one of these channels that is a very fun channel, but we're seeing influencers gain really quickly, really moving the needle when it comes to brand engagement or when they're talking about brands. Right now, brands aren't prepared for these conversations having on TikTok. And I think the industry needs to find a way to solve for that solution. And we're looking at some unique ways to do that. And some of that may even be videos that our care agents have via TikTok. And so kind of taking social care solutions from being, I want to say 2D to almost a 3D type interaction to where we can have a fun and engaging back and forth, maybe on a platform such as TikTok.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, it was just a couple of years ago, I think, when we thought social care, we were probably thinking primarily Facebook and Twitter. And then with a couple of my clients in particular industries, it was popping up more on Instagram. And, it's pretty funny because it was like, oh, well, but we don't do customer service there. I'm like, oh, but yes, we do. We have to do it wherever the customer goes, right? You can't just say that's not what this is for. So I think we've broken that mentality too. And it is exciting to think about, especially a brand like yours that's just so fun and so exciting and so innovative. Michael, I could talk to you for so long. You know how much I love your brand and the work that you do and admire it. I thank you so much for your insights and for taking us through the Alaska journey. I will tell you, and I swear this is 100% true, the next place I'm going to is Santa Fe. It is one of my favorite places in the world, not just because that's where you're from, but there's a very magical spot just about 45 minutes outside of Santa Fe called Abiquiu. It's Georgia O'Keeffe's ranch. Ghost Ranch, and it is wonderful for anyone who just wants to get out, and also if you're a creator or writer of any kind. So thank you for reminding me that I need to book that flight, and so happy to have you on Brand, and again, thanks for your insights.
Thanks, SG. I'm thrilled that you had me on. I'm thrilled that we had a chance to talk social. This has been a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing you tweet on your way to Santa Fe.
Absolutely. And hopefully seeing you again in person very soon.
I would love that.
Thanks again.
Take care, my friend.